for these sessions is #LSG Webinar. So if you enjoy the session, please feel free to let the world know about it on Twitter. And you can share your thoughts as we go along. Well, that's probably enough from me. Enough housekeeping. We've got 80 people in the room ready to listen to Paul Morton of CrossKnowledge talking about moving from an LMS to an LES. What does LES stand for? I leave that to you. Over to you, Paul.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Don, and good morning and hello, my lords, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls. It's my delight and pleasure to be here. I'm really looking forward to revealing the grand E, and let's have a look at where we're going with that. My name is Paul. I'm from CrossKnowledge, and that's pretty much as much of an introduction as anybody really needs these days. I have the pleasure of being the consulting director for the UK and the Nordics, and that means that I get to spend all of my time with my fabulous customers, challenging them, being challenged by them, and occasionally picking their pockets now and then for a bit of cash, but that's a lot of fun as well. So it is, as I said, my pleasure to be here chatting about LMS to LES, and what the devil does it mean? What is it? Well, LMS, we all know what that is. It's Learning Management System, isn't it? Now, what you're looking at here, what's the magic picture here? 1987 to 2013, 25 years of development. Wow, what a picture that is, isn't it? We live in an amazingly global world, and the companies that are going to be ahead of the game in 10 years don't even exist yet. You know this. You know all these numbers. In 2005, the BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, and China, they had something like 15, 19 odd companies in the Fortune 500. 2012, they had 75. Now that's a growth rate, isn't it? Anybody going to put their hands up and say that the new market leaders are going to be Europeans like me? No, they're not. Not a chance. Well, they might be. I'd like to try, but I don't really think they will be. And I tell you what they won't be doing as well. They won't be optimizing their HR processes or tightening their belts or trying to do more with less. What they will be is they will be thinking about critical, immediate skills transfer. They will be focused like laser lights on attracting and retaining people, engaging people. They won't be creating a learning culture. They'll be trying to ride the tiger that already exists within their companies and trying to keep up. They, as well as CrossKnowledge, they're not in the business. They're not going to be in the business of HR productivity. They're going to be changing the world, one person at a time. They're going to be organizationally transforming themselves. So my mission, my call for you today is to focus on what makes learners learn. Easy as that, I think. So I've got a question for you then. How do you react to the words learning management system?
Always have to be careful asking this question. We normally ask this question and step right back.
Yeah, step back and watch it go. Well, how do you react to the words learning management system? I've got 3 words for you, I would say. Rust, clunk, and pain. But, you know, maybe that's just because my beloved 15-year-old Nissan just failed its annual MOT, but I'm sure you've got some thoughts as well.
We have indeed got thoughts coming in, and we shouldn't want to prejudice the audience into
Oh, I shouldn't have said that, should I? I should have kept held back there, Don, shouldn't I?
But none, you see, Andy Wooler says it pays my mortgage. He's been positive. 90s usability, says Tom. Basically, we've got a lot of stuff coming through here, which is pretty negative, I think we could say, or perhaps realistic. Tony was first out the block saying administrative overhead, boring, creaky, hard to get into. It makes me feel cold, says Steve. Very specific. Like Teresa's one, controlled by trainer, admin, compliant, says Virginie, which I think is a good point. After all, LMSs are used for compliance, and Web 1.0 concepts, says Richard, which I think is a very good thing. And Lillian says also just something you need. Old-fashioned and slow, says Bev. Structured, formal. There's a lot of this sense that there is that it's something which you sort of reluctantly have to use, and it's a bit old-fashioned. On the other
Well, I
hand,
like Hans's one there.
Yep.
Sounds like a supplier's word. Yeah, you're right. It's language that we use. I'm a supplier. We talk about learning management systems. Do you want one? We've got one. What do the learners think? They don't care.
Okay, a little bit more upbeat to finish with. Kativa says good for tracking and reporting. And Pete says great potential, but disappointing delivery. And Sam says, look, my customers like them because they record, track, and report for compliance purposes. And Andy says, yes, it's a vital part of what we do. So there we go, sort of an early onslaught of people throwing their hands up in the air, and then perhaps some more positive stuff coming through. But I think everyone feels they could be better. Paul, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a good place to start, and I think we have to move from this concept of the traditional learning management system, as I said, rusty and clunky, maybe, and we have to have a look at something, I think, that is we've got to go somewhere new. We've got to go somewhere. We have to take this forward. So we've got a nudge, I think, here, a nudge amongst all of us to try and find an answer to helping organizations to change quickly, to use these learning technologies and use them as a lever of change, as a lever of motivation, and I think then to become some sort of backbone of your learning organization. That's one of my points here. Now, I'm going to talk and show a little bit about what CrossKnowledge does, because I have access to our own systems. These are the things I'm going to show, and I'm going to share our ideas around them as well. I'm going to do my best not to do this as a sales pitch, I promise. I'm not the sales guy. I'm the consulting director, so maybe I'll just pick your pockets later on if you want to perform an orderly queue. But
don't worry, Paul. I'm always here to make sure nobody does any selling. Don't worry about that.
That's fine. I promise to do my best not to. So what that then means is if we start here, content delivery matters. Now, many of the people in the comments here said, well, you need it. You need it because you need to put the learning out and work out who's done it, don't you? Well, most of the learning management systems today are in fact that. They are training distribution channels, aren't they? What you do is you whack some content on a website, send them an email, and you sit back basking in the glow of Rome burning as you fiddle, wondering why nobody's actually using the thing, because I think what is important here is the learner experience. That's really what matters. So for the systems to work, they have to become an experience rather than just a bundle of stuff on a website. Because I think what we're moving from is a world where programs are prescribed top-down to an audience, into what? Into a world really where learning is pulled down, and that really affects the motivation of the learners you're working with. You're pushing the door marked pull, and again we're sitting back wondering why maybe you're not really getting the results on the scale that you need. So perhaps we should be looking to, instead of prescribed and push, to free and to pull, these opennessnesses we can think about. And again, event-driven content. We've got to be moving now from somewhere where training events are essentially face-to-face or virtual or a dot of e-learning now and then to lifelong learning. It's something that's embedded in everything you do as a process, not really an event, because I'm going to use the word here, Ebbinghaus, 1885. Wonderful chap. We still think that a one-off thing, a one-off learning intervention will actually cut the mustard. Really? 1885, Mr. Ebbinghaus works out that's the one. He works out that it's not going to work. In the 20 minutes it takes you to put your jacket on and leave the door of your training room, you forget 40% of what you've learned. And it's not just face-to-face stuff that you forget. It is, of course, thank you, Don, for the link, it is, of course, any one-off event, any one-shot piece of e-learning, virtual learning, phone call, WebEx. One thing isn't going to cut it. It's a process. It's a process with repetition, reinforcement, reflection, recognition, reignition, and really it's not news. Well, it shouldn't be news. So the next we have to look at then is compliance. Somebody mentioned compliance here in the chat as well. And yeah, of course it's compliance. Everybody has to comply. We have to be sure that we know what we're doing. We have to basically cover our backsides, right? But we've got to move from this. We've got to move from this world where the learning is required top-down to somewhere where it's motivating, where it's captivating, where if you're just shoving stuff down people's throats as if you're trying to stuff a goose, people aren't going to learn anything. Well, they're not going to learn as effectively. If you have a captive, mandatory compliance audience, come on, let's use it. We can do something cool, yeah? Why don't we make them really learn the stuff that will actually keep them safe or keep their organization safe, and maybe maybe even make them want to learn something more like this. Gosh, that was fun. I want to do it again. Can you imagine anybody in your audience saying that about your compliance training today? Not entirely sure. Formal learning, class-based, e-learning, virtual classrooms, these are all formal learning modalities here. So where we need to go is the informal, naturellement. We need to look at what the informal stuff is, what's the on-the-job assignment that we can give people, the real-life activities, stuff that fits into that big 90% bucket of the 70-20-10. Charles, I can see you're online there. That's the stuff. Thank you very much indeed. So it's the 90% bit here, because today we all go and do some training and then we come back. Tomorrow that's done. It's over. Because, as we've seen, it's got to be a part of a process. It's mixing the formal and the informal. And this is what we actually do with, we've got a mentored learning format, and it works really well. If you think about it, it's kind of like the work-life balance. There isn't a work-life balance anymore. It's work-life integration. So isn't there going to be a work-learn integration that we have to be looking at too? So where then do we take it? We've got to move away from just adding up lots and lots of learning activities into creating a pedagogically designed, elegant learning activity that's actually related to each other, something that's not just glued together with a magic link, but like an adaptive learning path with self-assessments, prescriptions, online mentoring, all this good stuff. So we have to be looking at a full blend of content here, and this blend has to be run not just by the L&D types. In the magic dream, I have a dream. In the magic dream, the tech has to become so easy that everybody can do it. Everybody that's not an expert can do it. It should be a joy to design, to build, to deploy learning content. It shouldn't be a chore, or it certainly shouldn't be a skilled technical task. Everybody should be able to do this. And do it where? In the office, at my desk, with my mouse, clicking on my laptop, and then I go, mobile, I'm going to say mobile. Everybody does the mobile thing, don't they? It has to be mobile devices, but it's not really just about the devices. Less about that, I think, and more about the usage. We've got to reach out, go where the learner is. Where are they spending their time? How are they spending their time? Take what we want them to do and hand it to them where they find themselves today. So, LMS, a little bit more than just a mobile. It's really an environment, isn't it? What we have to do is take our learning to wherever the learner finds themselves every day. So wherever they spend their time, we have to be. It's not a balance. It's an integration. It's a new unity. It's a new one holistic, ergonomic, beautiful entirety that all has to work together. Because if you think organizationally about your skills, they evolve, don't they? Hands up. Anybody have a skills, job, matrix, leadership framework? No, I'm assuming everybody does. Is it up to date? Is it bang up to date? I bet you that by the time you actually wrote it down, thank you, the time you wrote them down is already obsolete. Why is it obsolete? Well, because your business is a living, moving, organic, messy life form. Putting it all in some model is practically impossible. It's a bit like trying to model a national economy. The economy is the model, or your business is the model. How do you write it down? How do you actually do that? I actually think that LinkedIn had a very interesting idea with their endorsements thing. I'll look at that in a minute as well. It's that bottom-up, contributed by the people type idea where everybody gets together and says, what do we need? What are the skills I have? Where are we wanting to go? How can I do more myself? It's this personal contribution that I think is really exciting. That's what I'm going for. So, you ready for it? Don, you standing by? We all need to be moving from the learning management system.
I can barely contain myself.
Try. Please try. Moving from the learning management system. And we're moving to what I want to call A learning experience system.
It was worth the wait.
So I think you need to build these things. You need to have them built, have them created, designed by ergonomists and analytics and then business intelligence experts, not software developers. You need the software developers. These are the guys doing the coding and stuff. But the people who design this, the vision has to be kind of like the Harvard, MIT, edX stuff. You know, it's this. None of them are learning types. They're all ergonomics. They're business intelligence guys. These are the people who've decided what they want to achieve, and they've made it happen. Back to my point. What will make the learner learn? What will make them change their behaviors, change the world one person at a time by giving them what they need, where they need it, when they need it, on the device that they need it. Yeah, okay, I'll move on. Right. You're all experienced users of these platforms. I saw the list at the beginning. Most folk have had a play around these different systems. My question for you is, what is your user experience of most of them? Now, some people actually covered them off at the beginning, saying I said it was a bit clunky, whatever. They're not all bad. They're not all bad. Some of them are fun. Some of them are interesting.
And when you say user experience, can you be clear, Paul? Are you talking about using it as an administrator, as a trainer, or as somebody trying to learn something?
As a learner. That's really what it's all got to be about.
It has, hasn't it?
It has to be about the learner here.
Charles Jennings, of course, kicked off this discussion in the chat area with Mark Rosenberg's quote,
Course vending machines.
Course vending machines, which is a terrible phrase, isn't it? But a terribly accurate one, unfortunately, sometimes.
You take your 50p up to the machine, stick it in the Coke machine, you realise it's not enough to actually buy it anymore, and you remove the content from it. That's it. So you then, as the administrator or the owner of this thing, you are hoping against hope that somebody's actually going to use it, aren't you? Well, for us then, as...
Very interesting there. Just one word that sprung out from that in response to that question. Cedric said linear, which I think is actually hits the nail on the head for a lot of user experience of an LMS, linear. In contrast to your idea of there being a series of experiences, this idea of you're going through a linear process, which is an event. So I think that's actually quite a telling single word there. Sorry, back to you.
I like that. So I'm going to try and break down our ideas into three big chunks here. User experience, learning intelligence, and the industrialization of what we're trying to do here. I'll just talk very briefly about what I think each of these means. Now, you know, I work for a company that sells this stuff, so I am a supplier. And for us as a supplier of these systems, it's a major competitive advantage. If we have a system that's easy, it's intuitive, it works, it's easy and elegant, it's a competitive advantage for us. But it is equally competitive. It is an equal competitive advantage for our customers. It gives them faster, better access and more effective results in what they're trying to achieve. Learning intelligence, I think you can really understand that as business intelligence. It's who's done what skills have been developed. And an interesting metric, time to competence, I think. Time to competence is a good one to measure. And then industrial deployment. We work with some massive organizations and some very small ones. But if you want to make massive changes, you've got to hit massive audiences, so the systems have to be capable of delivering all that at the same time. So that's really what those three things mean. Let's have a wee look at what we're talking about. So what we are then doing around user experience and what we're then doing today, and as I said, I'm going to show you some of our systems. It's what I've got to share, and I think we've made a decent start. I mean, we've got a pretty good LMS ourselves. We've got about 5 million learners with a third-party integration. What we do so far works pretty well. So I'm using this as an example. I like to say, well, actually, we're sexy, but so this is, for example, it's a gorgeous, on-message place that learners want to be. It's fast, it's a sharp, easy to use place. This is the example for L'Oreal here. And then how do you actually start to get people to use these things, these engaging learning experiences that are 100% profiled and contextualized? Well, you've got to flog it to them. Anybody tells you that L&D isn't sales is wrong. I think that training generally, learning, development, is alongside the chief executive, the most impactful, the most transformative group of people in an organization. At least they could be. They really could be if we actually used all the tools at our disposal to engage almost like a multimodal marketing campaign. So no magic bullet to do this. And what you're looking at here, this is like a gorgeous, really simple email that digest. You click in one big button, bang, you're into the next thing you actually have to be doing here. So, and then we also mentioned the other side of this, which is the people who have to put it all together. It should be a joy for the people running it. It should be simplicity and elegant at its core. Because if you make your L&D guys, if you make their lives hard, they're less likely to do inspiring work for you. It should be easy like a Sunday morning. There you go. Something like that. So what we're then thinking of, taking that as a starting point, we then take this idea of the profile portal a little bit further. And bottom right-hand corner, lovely lady with a biro pointing at some content here. She's a virtual coach, and she's recommending content. So you, Paul, you did this material here, and you liked it, so you might want to consider doing the following. So we're trying to recommend something. We're trying to be a virtual coach, and we're trying to recommend material based on your activity and based on your preferences. Then, along the concept of adaptive interfaces, we've got something here that needs to change as you progress. So you see the little sunshine in the top right-hand corner here? You're on time, happy, well done. If you're late in your work, you got a little sad rain cloud. It's really subtle, nice things like that are quite friendly. And you can also see, we also want to promote what your colleagues are doing, because a bit of peer pressure never really hurt here. This is the sort of stuff that we think we should all be seeing in all of these systems we're working with. And then we can share content already on what we do, but what I want to try and do is maybe not just use the system. Remember I was talking about taking the content, taking the material, taking the learning to the learners wherever they find themselves. It's to, I think, be able to share materials through my corporate social network or through email, and then be able to just copy that, whack it into whatever the platform I want to use, maybe even share it to my business partners, share it to my friends, share it to my family if something is of interest. Why not? Why not open it up for everybody? Why not be able to do that? You've got to have an app, right? Everybody's got an app, okay? So you've got to track, change, assess, and learn. Start on mobile, finish on your desktop. But again, as I said earlier, mobile doesn't necessarily exclusively mean using your phone. It's different devices are used differently. So I think in this case here, we're looking at video as probably being the most suitable for phone-sized devices. So anyway, that's my idea there around the first point that we're looking at. So what I will then want to ask you this. Here. Oh, no, wrong question. Yeah, that's better. What learning intelligence do you really need? What sorts of... It's not reporting. I don't want to give you a report of who did what. What learning intelligence do you need to provide to your business? What does your business need in order to transform? Not to be sure that it has transformed, not to tick the box, but in order to be part of the transformative process. What learning intelligence do you need to provide? So this...
Talking here, Paul, about information from a system, a report, or are you ignoring the idea of reporting and just asking how would an organization know that it was transforming, was succeeding at what it was doing?
I think this is going away from reporting because everything out there can say, Paul did a course on Tuesday, he got 10%, he needs to do it again. Done. I think this is really about business intelligence. It's big data, that sort of thing. The analytics around enterprise competencies, really. It's how can you understand who is benefiting from what you're doing? How do you understand who's benefiting from all your different training activities? What skills are being developed? How do you, as L&D, how do you, as the people behind your training, participate in the evolution and the transformation of your organization? It's not HR process, it's business transformation.
So we're talking about exactly about business impact rather than numbers tracking process. And Andy Wooler comes up with a good answer to that one, saying, Andy, by the way, is an LMS expert of many years standing. We need to get actionable insights. He says, I like that word, actionable insights from the data we collect. And this needs to combine learning data with other data. In other words, if you're looking at what you're doing, you can't look at the learning stuff by itself. You have to, as I think you're alluding to, Paul, look at the learning in conjunction with what is happening in the business. Otherwise, it's entirely isolated.
Exactly. I mean, you've got so much data flowing around your organization. And I'm not saying that we are a big data or a data analytics expert group, but you certainly have those sorts of people around. Take the learning intelligence, take the business intelligence, add it all together. Let's find out. We must be able to do something a little bit better than this, can't we?
Just one point before we move on. I noticed that Kavita says, look, if we don't get the reports, the process reports, how do we know how many people have accessed the courses and completed them? We're not saying, I don't think Paul is saying that we shouldn't be able to know who's done what. I think the point is that's not the end of the story. That's a fairly trivial, technically speaking, a fairly trivial task to do. We shouldn't stop at that point. We should go on to try to understand what that information and other information means about whether we are actually succeeding, as Tony points out, aligning the performance of an individual against the learning they've taken and how they've applied it. So it's about going beyond did they finish it to what happened next and what impact did it have. Sorry, Paul, that's my little update. So back to you.
No, it's that. Tony says it's aligning this performance. It's an interesting one I'd like to see is the time to competency. How long, that's a good metric, isn't it? How long does it take somebody to get competent? Isn't that it's something we should be able to measure? And that, it's more than just have you done it, have you not? So, yeah, learning intelligence. What we do today is we generate a ton of information. So we get 3 different learning formats. You do blended, online stuff, adaptive learning paths. This is the push where you capture what people do, how long it takes, that sort of data here. In communities, you can find out who can share what, who is doing what, who's active, what material is used, when. These are the standard metrics. How do you take this further? Then what can you do with that sort of stuff? How can you track who's collaborating with whom, who's a knowledge czar, knowledge champion, a learning champion, who's somebody you should be promoting and motivating. Maybe with something like this is one of our mentored learning formats. It's an individual learning journey, but again, there's a lot of good metrics and information here that are gathered together, and this is the traditional stuff. Well, we like to think it's a little bit different from the traditional stuff, but it's a lot of data that gets pulled together, aggregated to a nice manager's dashboard, see what people are going on, what's going on, what's not going on, but with that then as a starting point, where do you go? What's Michelle there says, the hidden knowledge champions you have in your organization and the hidden knowledge you have in your organization. How do you capture that? How do you pull it all together? Well, what other information can you pull through, and what can you do with it? The easy stuff here, we just want to add in lots of different materials, lots of different types of systems and accesses to the content you have. But then, oops, one too fast. But then, with that data, what can you do with it? Going back then just to the idea of learner motivation and engagement with that, let's have a quick look at badges. Nice way of making certificates obsolete, diplomas obsolete, or even degrees in further education if you're a heretic. Badges like this can be used as recognition, reward, setting skills targets, setting your own objectives to do something. How do you then make that really valuable? What do you do with that? Well, I mentioned right at the very beginning here about I think the LinkedIn concept is quite nice. Again, lots and lots of data coming from lots of different places. This is mine. This is my LinkedIn profile, and honestly, I wasn't really a convert, and I do only very rarely reciprocate in this. But this is kind of a weighted list of the however many contacts or so I've got, and it's remarkably accurate, and it's quite surprising. This sort of thing inspires us, I think. This is something we can really learn from the bottom up, the opportunities to share and make permanent my learning badges, my badges of courage of what's going on here. So I think I'm grasping for some way of summarising this, Donald, but I think it's actually just too big a concept to come out in 3 pithy bullet points. But I think the idea is that, yes, we can do reporting. Yes, we all have to do that. Yes, there's tons of data out there, but what do we do with it when we get there? I think sharing it openly and transparently and giving people the tools to discover what they have in their organizations, as well as using that information to be part of the transformative journey, rather than simply reporting that the transformative journey has taken place. So, my last point. How big and scalable does this stuff really then need to be? Did you need this, these platforms, these systems for if you've got 20 people in your company? 200, 2,000, 200,000. Where is everyone? Where are they all sitting? Are they all in Western Europe with high bandwidth connections, or are they spread around the world? High bandwidth, low bandwidth, that sort of stuff. So how big and scalable do these things then need to be is my question to you.
And I suppose the answer might be, it depends, but I guess we could probably be more sophisticated than that. So I'd like to hear what people think about how scalable a system needs to be, both for your own particular circumstances and also for, I guess, anybody's circumstances who might be trialing to run learning across their organization. My gut feeling is that the scalability will depend, of course, on the organization, but of course the worst thing you can do is put a system in place and then find that it's not adapting to your needs as you grow. That's always a tough thing to face when you've got to strip something out and put something new in. I tell you what, Paul, I know we've got quite a lot to get through. Did you just want to carry on here?
Sure,
and let people carry on with their quote, with their thoughts to that. So let's hear about scalability.
Well, this scalability, if you think about it, it's a little bit like good accessibility options that make everyone's life easier. If you think like the handles you find in hotel showers. If something is robust, scalable, it's going to mean that it's better for everyone. It's going to be faster, more reliable, secure, local content access from your cloud, etc. But the other side of the scalability then is exactly how many of these systems do you have? How many LMSs have you got in your company? How many HR systems have you got in your company? Do they talk together? Does scalability mean that the system itself has to be vast and enormous, or does it actually have to work with everything else that you're talking to already? Does it have to, do you need to push the same sort of content out on your SharePoint system as on your second, third, and fourth LMSs that then all tracks back to SAP HR via your sum total LMS? So I think what we have to find in these things is that we have to then be as interoperable as we possibly can. Nobody is really designing one-stop shops anymore. I think that is kind of gone the way of the old ERP systems. Everything is now best of breed. People are doing what I call point buying. I want a bit of this because it's good. I want a bit of that because it's good. And I want to pull it all together the way that I want it to run for my organization. And then it's not just integrating with other different systems. What you then have to do is pull in all the different bits of content that you want to deal with. And as much as I would love you all to use the CrossKnowledge 17,000 pieces of learning content in 16 languages in leadership, management, personal development, sorry, I'll try not to sell it to you. We have fabulous content. For example, as much as I'd love you all to use that and nothing else, in reality, how many different types of content libraries do you have around there? How do you work with them? So whatever you're working with has to be, this is going back to the ease of use again, has to be as easy as possible to work with, to pull in, to work with all sorts of different libraries of material. We'll get TED Talks down there. You can use them as part of your learning journeys. And because there's many, many routes into these systems as well, they've got to use whatever the authentication you currently work with. So they've got to there could be as few passwords as possible. Single sign-on is an absolute must. I'll give you an interesting statistic. We use Google Analytics on our system, and we did a little bit of a survey, and we found that half of the learners, 50% of learners, were failing to go further than the log-on page. 50% of learners were dropping out at the log-on page. Half of them. And we wonder why sometimes you get low usage rates. Well, if you think as a learner, your LMS is probably fairly low priority. If you've got to go and dig out an old password to log on, they're going to say, no thank you, I'm going to get on with playing the Candy Crush saga, I've got other things to do. For example, would you stop using Twitter, Yammer, LinkedIn if you had to log in every single time you did it? Of course you would. It's a pain in the backside. I wouldn't bother. 50%. Charles, it was 50%, and now we do single sign-on. We have done for many years, thank you very much. So it's, Bob, the IS department are anti-SSO, that's fine. Can you have all 20,000 of your learners calling the IS department to reset their passwords, please? There are ways of maybe presenting these as benefits as well. Now, content, again, back to the content thing. It's not just catalogues of content from all over the planet, but it's your self-generated stuff. It's the diverse material that you've been pulling together. It's how many different sorts of stuff that you're actually scraping around the world, trying to gather together, to put together into learning paths, learning journeys, and having to get systems that talk to all this and understand how it all works. Video is a huge one. Video is a very large one that we've discovered, and it is wonderful, but it's an absolute nightmare to manage. So I'll give you an example. We had a problem in China. There was a customer video that just broke. It wasn't running at all well. We had a look at it, and it was about 60 megabytes. So we uploaded it into our latest and greatest thing, and the LMS auto-converts it. High definition version came out to be 10 megabytes. Low definition version was about 2 megabytes. We made it as easy as possible. The new technology takes away the pain of managing and pushing all this sort of stuff out there. Flack, yeah, Tony, get you there. Exactly. So we MP4s and all that. So we're back to focusing on what makes the learner learn. We're taking away as many of the troubles as we possibly can. That's what we try to do. So we try to manage all of this stuff for our admins and our learners. And it's where all these things have to be. So it doesn't really matter where you are in the world. CloudFront or Microsoft Azure will push down the right sort of content for you, wherever you are, at the right speed for the right people. I just wanted to share this one with you. We're working a little bit with these guys, Bright Cove. Do please go and have a look at them. Very interesting bunch. We've been very impressed with them. It's an interesting hosting platform. It's quite interesting. I'll let you just go and have a wee look at that in your own time. Last but not least, one thing, industrialization, industrial scalability doesn't just mean good old high redundancy, big servers and stuff. I think industrialization really also means accommodating internationalisms and international ideas. You go to Asia, you go anywhere around the world, and around that part of the world, and you'll see these QR codes absolutely everywhere. They've been around in the UK and in Western Europe now for a wee while, but they've been floating around in Japan and China for years, and they're incredibly popular. So, a bit of marketing there for you. Be able to cope with stuff like flash tags, marketing, things like that. So it's not just back to the idea of not just one magic bullet, but having lots of different ways of engaging with people and getting them to access their content. So my magic point: take the learning to the learners, focus on what makes the learners learn, and get everything else out of the way. Get all the noise out of the way. Learner engagement, that's a key. And at that point, Don, I'm going to say, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You're going to stop and draw breath. I think that's a really good overview. And I do like the tenet that we should be moving from the management system. After all, we can't really manage learning, can we? Learning is something that happens in people's heads. What we can do is we can use systems, as people have pointed out, what they're necessary for, pushing materials out to people, tracking them and so on. But we can also perhaps use them, as you've explained, to build an environment in which people can learn, a learning experience system. Very good. Big controversial, well, apart from the business of LinkedIn, which precipitated a huge conversation while you were talking, big conversation taking place about compliance and the role of LMSs with compliance, and the number of facets of that, which I'd like to just drill down on if we can. And by all means, do please keep the questions and the thoughts coming in the chat area while I'm chatting with Paul and getting his responses on this. If we've got an LMS, as many large organizations do, if we have compliance things that we have to train people on, not so it changes their behavior typically, but so that it is something we can show that we have done in order to pass various regulations. Those two combined together have led in the past for the LMS to be used as a vehicle for delivering typically rather dull training, which has been resented by employees so that, and it's purely done for organizational benefit to protect them legally. And we've all heard tales, whether it's true or not, I don't know, of children being paid by their parents to click the next button to get them through the courses of compliance they have to do. In that situation, what would you suggest to an organization in that situation to get them to move from this use of the LMS to a better use or a better delivery of that compliance material?
I think it is going back to the fundamentals and asking, what are we genuinely doing? What are the values of the organization? What are you genuinely trying to do? Are you covering your backside?
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing that? In that case, then fine. Take your LMS and use it as a weapon. Hit people over the head with it. Take your content, hit people over the head with it, and yep, tick your boxes. Good job. Compliance stuff in some industries, and some of our customers are BP, for example. Compliance there saves people's lives. Mm. It does. I mean, if you don't comply, you will die. Yeah. You will have horrible, horrible things happen to you. Compliance will save you from prison. You will be exported in manacles to the United States of America and sit in a small box for a long time in substandard federal housing. It's there for your benefit as well as for the organizational one. And I think if you can grasp that, you go back to the core of what you're actually trying to do and what are the values of what you're trying to achieve. I think it's more fundamental than systems or content. It is actually, what are you as an organization trying to do? And do you value it? Can you get your individuals in your organization to value it? And if so, please do it nicely. Use it. Use that as an opportunity. You've got a captive audience of these poor sods who have to go through all this stuff. Let's use it. Let's use that as an opportunity to encourage, to engage, and do it well.
Well, interestingly, actually, I'm doing a webinar conversation at 12 o'clock with Nigel Harrison about performance consulting, which is actually largely about how do you have conversations with people in organizations that shift the balance and how learning and development is viewed from being a fulfillment house to being an integral part of the business. So that's actually echoing exactly what I would hope for. Dave says, look, it's a good question. I've got 14 packages for 4,000 people to be undertaken in the remainder of this year. So David, I hope that's useful in some way. If not, please come back with a question. I think helping people see the value of it for themselves is also crucial. In BP, you go to the BP buildings on land, you go down to Bedfont Lakes, to the BP headquarters there, and everyone by law, not by law, but by BP culture and regulation, has to hold on to the handrails when they're going up even a 3 steps flight of stairs, because in every BP facility you have to hold on to the handrail, because in some BP facilities, like an oil rig, that will be something that will save your life at some point. So that level of cultural adaptation and taking compliance very seriously is something that most organizations don't do, unfortunately. BP does now, and I think it's something which we could probably all learn from. And Andy says very, very heartfelt, it's a shame that most regulators do not help in changing this. No, most regulators, unfortunately, produce stuff designed to be tested by, delivered by, and tested by the most tedious methods possible.
Multiple guest questions.
Multiple questions. Oh my goodness! Right, I'm afraid we've opened a bit of a can of worms.
Let's not. Okay.
With all that,
We could be here for many, many hours.
We've got. You've talked about the moving from LMS to LES to the experience side of it. You've done this with customers, I'm taking.
Yes.
That.
It's a developmental process for us. I mean, I shared with the group what we've got and where we're going. It's just something to think about.
So my question for you is, you're right, it's a development process for everybody, for vendors, for people in the profession, and so on. What sort of pushback, what sort of thoughts, what sort of challenges have you come up against with people actually trying to do this? Where have they experienced difficulties or perhaps had unexpected successes?
Ooh, what's been hard?
Nothing, of course, that you can't tell us.
It's an awfully hard question, Don.
Sorry. In those circumstances, put one on the back burner, and let's go on to some other stuff that's coming through, and then we can come back to that one later on. There's something that will jump into your head. Motivating people to attend or to do training, well, face-to-face or online, can be difficult when, as David points out, some of the packages are just in case. You're training people in case something happens. That could be for health and safety. It could be for anything. I mean, it's difficult sometimes to get people to get excited about even something that might be quite useful, like learning a language, because it's something which might be valuable in 5 months' time rather than immediately. With your thought of moving from the LMS to the LES, do you think that there's a possibility with the technical infrastructure you've got of using a rich variety of media to make that more engaging for people, make them more inclined to actually get involved with the learning?
I think you're then looking at things like engagement. You want people to hook into what you're doing, and I think you have to then look at the inspiration of the individual behind why they should do it. And I think then that, again, it's not the question of the technology. It goes back to the what's in it for me, which links into what's the learning objective, what's the business objective, and what's the strategic objective. If I can clearly see that what I'm doing is going to have a benefit, then I'm more likely to do it. It's the question. If my little girl comes to me and says, Daddy, what's a Patanosaurus hex? I'm thinking, right, dinosaurs, here we go, books, off to the museum. But otherwise, if I could talk until I'm blue in the face at her about fabulous dinosaurs and things like that, and she won't listen to me. She has to ask me the question first. So it's the personal, what's in it for me, the engagement piece, I think. It's not the technology here.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that. I think it's absolutely the right answer, of course. Building an environment that fosters learning and encourages that is the real challenge. I think having a good system is a part of it, but they're only part of it. They're necessary, but they're not sufficient, as I always say. Tanaz asks, how do we measure the effectiveness of a learning experience system? What analytics would we focus on, and so on? You talked, the third section, about the business impact. LMSs get measured by what they produce, which is numbers typically about learning activity. What would you see as being the sort of measures you'd expect an LES to produce that would enable us to show it was being effective?
I think you're right. I mean, the LMS piece here, a lot of people try and measure the LMS activity by hits. Uh-huh. You want lots of hits and people taking lots of content. And I had a serious discussion with a serious person, a very big bank. His goal, vice president or whatever he was, said, I want more hits in my LMS. And I was thinking, well, cat videos and comics, that would do it. But really, it's not quite what you're trying to achieve. So the LES experience here, what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve organizational transformation. So I would say that you have to push the metric, because most L&D types, most people in training, while experienced in what they do, don't necessarily have the capacity, capability, or desire to be doing organizational measurement. So if somebody comes to you and says, I need to transform this part of my company to do X, Y, and Z, your question is, okay, why, and how are we going to measure it? And you push it back. You push it back to them, you push it back to the business, and the business has to come to you with the measure of saying, we will produce more widgets after having done this training, that sort of thing. Or we will be more customer-centric rather than product-centric. So whatever their measure is what you then have to adopt. This is where the data thing comes in. This is the magic dream that I've got. This is where we can look at all this stuff that's produced by the HR systems, by the ERP systems, by the LMSs, LESs, tie them all together in some fantastic Bayesian web of information and pull out just what we need to do to be part of the transformational journey rather than just to measure it having happened.
And I think that's a really great answer, and I think from a vendor, a very honest one as well, and quite the right one, and again, something we'll be touching on this webinar at 12 o'clock, which is that you don't measure the effectiveness of the system. You measure whether the business goal has been attained. That's the point. And the effectiveness of the system is not an issue, because if we're doing what it's going to do, the question is, have you pointed it in the right direction? I always say we need to get our heads up from under the bonnet and point the car in the right direction. It's a matter of using the tool the right way to answer the business problem. Steve Goodwin has a dream. He has a dream system. I'm going to share it with you, and then I'd like your response to it, Paul. He says, my dream system is instant access, short and precise learning on the job, no training calendar or courses, supported where needed by trainers as floor walkers. Floor walkers are people who are available on the factory floor or on the office floor to answer questions on the spot, and coaches on the job, positive feedback of outcomes, and then badges. So Steve's constructed a dream system there. Do you think that's something that's attainable today? Would you like to be...
I tell them, but apart from the badges, we're kind of doing that for a couple of clients already. It's, yeah, rock on. The badges thing is it's a technical thing. It's in our pipe. It's actually something we're playing with just now, trying to work out a good way of doing it. But the rest of it is, it's around your platform. It's what you do with the tools you've got rather than the tools themselves. Well, no, that's not right. You said it before, Don. The tool has to be strong and be able to do all these different things, but it's also what you do with it. It's how do you create the culture where people will come and they will accept that form of learning. I've not been sent to a training class, therefore it's not training. Actually, Johnny, yes it is.
Or maybe it's not training, but it is learning.
It's training, Jim, but not as we know it.
Andy asks the question, why are we thinking about the LMS/LES as the place where we get the analytics?
I love that one. Yeah.
Data's in a data warehouse. Just
of course it is.
Go and tap into it. So, Paul, go on. What do you think about that as a point?
Yeah, fine. Next. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, you've got... the LMS captures a ton of data, okay? Yeah. Your HR system captures a ton of data. So do your access cards to the building. They capture a ton of data. Where's it recorded? What can you do with it? How do you pull it all in? And where are the analyticists? Is that a word?
No, analysts.
No, it's more than that. It's somebody who does analytics of data. Yeah, okay, it's an analyst. Yeah, I give you. But, you know, it's where are the people who can then take that information, tie it all together and come up with some interesting insights? It's touching on this big data thing again, isn't it? We've got, as I said, we've got like 5 million learners. You would not imagine the size of the databases we have and what we do with them. I can only dream of where we can take that information tomorrow.
You may be aware, or you may not, that the Learning and Performance Institute, which I chair, does...
of which I am a fellow and delighted to so be.
You're very welcome, has a... learning map, we call it, the capability map, which tells you where you need to be to develop yourself. The report I have in front of me tells me that actually analysis of data is one of the weakest skills represented in the profession. So the points people are making up here about whether we actually are able to analyze stuff is another question altogether, and I think probably we're not.
And he just made a point there as well, not big data, but bigger insights from the data we already have. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. We're not really talking about big data. Andy's made the point, Nigel Payne made a conversation I had with him earlier this week. Actually what matters is what we, and Donald Clark as well, I talked to recently about this, what we're really talking about is big insight from the data we have, absolutely. Last concern or view or opinion from Teresa Williams here. My concern is that we can help people learn lots of things very quickly on demand. But often superficially, deeper learning takes time, which we don't seem to want to make available. I don't really think, Paul, this is something you can necessarily answer, but do you agree that that people are more time crunched than, and they're so time crunched they can't learn?
I think it is short-sightedness on both the individual, the management, especially the management, and sometimes even the learning professional. You take people out of class, out of their job for 3 days, chuck them in a room, and then hope they're going to come out with actually having some new knowledge, and we know it's not going to work. Take the 3-day class, break it apart, turn it into a 3-month learning journey. Online with offline, with bits of paper, with pigeons, I don't care how you do it, but just give people the time to do it. Break it apart, and we've got some information that tells us that people can do about an hour and a half of online stuff a week, shoehorned into their day job. Ask them to do that. That's being, that's respecting people's time. You're not asking people to take a lot of time out of their day job, but what you are giving them is the effective learning that will change behaviours.
With that, we're going to have to move on. I'm afraid it's the clock, time's winged chariot, I hear behind me, galloping down. We have 3 minutes to go, and I'm going to have to wrap up. Paul, great Q&A at the end, really exciting discussion, and as always, thanks to everybody coming into the chat session and sharing their thoughts. I mean, we have some really great quality thinking from people all across the industry and indeed all across the world, and it's always a pleasure to have everybody's thoughts. So thank you very much for joining in, and Paul, thank you very much for your thoughts there. I'm just going to...
It's been my pleasure.
Right, it's been great having you. If you've enjoyed it, please let the world know on Twitter. Sorry, I should have turned my phone off. I'm going to reject that with a message saying I'm in a meeting. There we go. Sorry, I don't know why I had that on. That's the tab. Here are all the resources, or some of the resources that we get through to the resources we've highlighted. People have been asking where things are available. As always, they are available on the Learning and Skills Group, so www.learningandskillsgroup.com is where you'll find on Monday recording of this, the text chat, and the slides themselves. You'll also find that box of resources I put available at the top of the screen there, you'll also find available there. And I'm sorry if I haven't included all of those. I'm going to ask my PA to pull out all that information because there's an awful lot of great URLs we've had shared today. So we'll pull all those out and make them available. And finally, oh gosh, look, at 12 o'clock we've got Performance Consulting, Learning Leadership, and Escaping the Training Ghetto. That's in 1 hour's time with Nigel Harrison, who's an expert on performance consulting, and my good self, Donald Taylor. I had a conversation with Nigel a couple of months ago, and I thought, you know what, we should just do a webinar on this, so we are. So please stick around if you can and join us again at 12 o'clock for that webinar. Same place, but in the meantime, it just remains for me to say thank you very much for everyone who's attended the chat session and contributed, or if you've just read and made it a valuable hour for yourself, thank you. And once again, Paul of CrossKnowledge, thank you very much for a very thought-provoking look at the current state of the LMS, where it could be going towards the learning experience system. Paul, thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Don. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Hope to see you guys at 12 o'clock. Bye for now.